Phil Mafah said, I was mad. I felt like I should have played more. I'm not saying that I should have been the number one back, but I felt like I could have had more carries. He almost transferred out of Clemson. And he had SEC schools reaching out to him. What does that mean across the board? Yeah, so many words and only one mouth to say it. Thanks for hanging out with me today, talking about one of my favorite players that's been on Clemson's team over the past few years. Of course, he is done, moving on to the NFL, Phil Mafah. And we wish him the very best. If you like talking Clemson football, you like talking college football, and you like hearing someone get so fired up they start making up words that, well, doesn't make sense, or losing my thought, and you're like, oh no, he just had an episode. This is your channel. I am an independent, so if you like that sort of thing, I hope you'll subscribe. Remember, it is free. Hit the thumbs up. That helps me in the algorithm. And drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Phil Mafah is arguably one of my favorite players over the past, well, since he arrived in 2021 with that top 5 recruiting class, according to 24/7 Sports. Will Shipley was in that recruiting class. Tristan Lee, Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Nate Wiggins. I could keep going. It was quite a recruiting class. But Phil Mafah came in. And he was playing fourth and fifth fiddle to people. I believe Lynn J. Dixon was there in his very first year. Correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, Will Shipley, Kobe Pace, Darian Rencher, I want to say, was still hanging around at the same time. And I remember Phil Mafah coming into the Florida State game as a true freshman. He ripped off about a 63-yard run. I was excited. There was just something about his physicality, and even though he's not a gazelle, the guy is much faster than what you realize. I just liked him. I liked the physicality. I liked his ability. And he was someone who had to bide his time. We know about the whole Notre Dame explosion game where he rushed for, 186 yards against a hot Notre Dame team. Clemson was coming off of a 2-game loss. Tyler from Spartanburg had just made his appearance in the Clemson world. And Clemson beat Notre Dame because of Phil Mafah. Will Shipley was banged up, so Phil got the nod. He rushed for 186, as I've said now a couple of times. But Phil Mafah this week, or recently, was on a podcast called Bab's Basement Podcast, and he said that he drew interest from SEC schools and considered transferring after his sophomore season in 2022. To quote Mafah, he said, actually, after my sophomore year, I was thinking about transferring. And I know Auburn had a lot of interest, UGA, Tennessee, really all the SEC schools. He went on to say, now this is not quoting him, this is just, a summary. He wasn't happy after the Clemson loss to Tennessee in the Orange Bowl at the end of the 2022 season. Quote, just because I felt like I could have played more, especially after my sophomore year, and I was just mad. Honestly, we lost to Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, and I was just like, man, I'm trying to win. But a lot of thought came into it, and I decided to stay. If you watch that Tennessee game, of course, that's with former offensive coordinator Brandon Streeter. That was his last game that he coached for Clemson before he was let go. Dabo hires Garrett Riley. But if you watch that game, you realize that Clemson was running quite well against Tennessee. But they decided to throw the ball 55 times with first-time starter Cade Klubnik, true freshman Cade Klubnik. Remember, you hear me talk about that from time to time, that in Cade Klubnik's freshman season, he threw 100 passes. 100 passes, 55 of them were in the Orange Bowl. You also, if you go back and watch that game, you'll see that Clemson had no problem handing the ball to Mafah or Shipley, and then in fact, Mafah peeled off a nice 10-yard run against Tennessee. And what plays did they call after that? A bunch of passing plays. Doesn't make sense. I say this to you guys all the time. Just because someone is coaching at a big-time school or even at a decent-sized school does not mean they know what they're doing. It can be too soon, too fast for them. Also, remember that they have analysts around them. They also have other coaches around them, including the head coach, who can look at them and say, this is not making sense. We're running the ball well. Why are you throwing the ball 55 times? And in this scenario, it almost cost us Phil Mafah. Now, he goes on to talk about what really made him stay. So we actually got a new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley. That went into it. Another thing that went into it was just Clemson as a school. In Clemson, we had this thing called Paul Journey, and it was just focusing on developing us as men and in the business world and connections. And I feel like that's something I can't get anywhere else. I feel like it's actually family there. My cousin goes to UGA, and he told me they don't guide a banquet there. I'm quoting him. At Clemson, we do all of that stuff. Coach really cares about that, and the people there really about you. So I feel like that was something you can't replicate somewhere else. Let's pause there. Phil did get a chance to run the football more in that upcoming season. So I know everyone is going to talk about Paul Journey, and that was the thing. If Phil Mafah did not get the carries that he got in 2023, I guarantee you every bit of color that's left in my hair and in my beard hair, Phil Mafah would have left. So Paul Journey, that's great and stuff, but Phil ended up, I'm not saying he's lying at all. I'm just saying I don't blame him for wanting to transfer. Now, there's a second part of this that I think that a lot of us needs to look at. Second part of this is tampering. Now, a lot of you are going to make a very real world statement. Well, Brian, you have to understand that happens all the time. I don't mean this as a jerk statement, but we have been tempered to make statements like that. You have to understand. The problem is not understanding. The problem is acceptance that there is a solid line in the concrete that says you don't do that stuff. Schools do it, and then all of a sudden we go, well, you just have to accept it happens. Then get rid of the rule. We're going to have this approach with it. And I'm sorry that most of us has worked in situations where the rules meant nothing. I'm sorry that some of us grew up in family situations where the rules meant nothing. And as you move on in more categories of life and the rules mean nothing, and this right here is not just a football statement. Football in the grand scheme of things means nothing. But when we're talking about things that matter, if you grow up in a situation or you work around a situation or you're involved in a serious situation where the rules mean nothing, it tempers you to believe that the rules mean nothing. What you need to accept is the rules mean nothing to the people who are above you or who have the power of the purse. You try and see what happens to you. Try it at your job. They'll fire you. The very people who are bending the rules will fire you and continue to bend the rules. The question is, so what do we supposed to do about it? As fans, we don't accept it. I think that we need to continue to press in any possible way that we can in a civil, lawful matter that people who are breaking these rules are held accountable. Not a slap on the wrist, not a good old-fashioned handshake that goes, don't you do that again, all right, and they're doing it 5 minutes after. No, there has to be some consequences. Or, here's my suggestion. Get rid of the rules and let's really turn this thing into the Wild West. He named schools who were interested in him. I mean, really. I mean, players now can sneeze hard and enter the transfer portal. Great, wonderful. They're not locked in. Coaches can come and go as they please and everything. Okay, that's been dealt with, sir. That's been dealt with, ma'am, to the 2% that watches my channel that are women. I look at the analytics. It's kind of funny. I think 2% is actually quite generous. But if we're going to have this approach that it's just okay that they do whatever, or they're reaching out through an agent, or the team's not reaching out because that's against the whatever loophole it is, we need to fix it. And when someone is caught doing what they've done or doing what they're currently doing, they pay a price. One of the best ways to stop schools from tampering is to fine them, and I'm not talking $50,000. Now, to you and I, $50,000, most likely if you're watching this video, you're like most Americans, that $50,000, though it will not make you rich and you can't retire on it, $50,000 is a lot of money. If someone offered to give you $50,000 today, you would say, sure, man, that's great. I'll take it. But these schools who has a buttload of money between donors, collectives, mishandling of taxpayers' dollars, you know, all that stuff that we have had to accept. They need to pay royally. Oh, you're tampering with players? That's a $5 million fine. What? What? That's egregious. Yeah, we know. We're going to make sure it hurts, and you're going to stop. I tell you, do it, y'all. I mean, when I'm sitting and watching some sports channel and I see it roll across the ticker at the bottom, so-and-so fined $50,000, $25,000, $200,000, and you know they make like $150 million. Some of y'all are terrible at percentages. If you make $10,000, let's do this. Let's say you make $75,000 a year. That's about $1,500 per week. If I gave you a fine of $7,500, that's 10% of how much you make. A person who makes $150 million, let's say $100 million, you fine them 10%, that's $10 million. So it makes $250,000 laughable. So this needs to be dealt with. There's two big, actually there's multiple parts of this story, and I'm going to talk about the other here in just a second. And I believe it's being dealt with, but I think it's going to have to continue to be dealt with. I don't think it's completely done. The first story is Phil Mafah almost transferred out. And I'm glad he didn't. The guy's talented. I hate how his career ended with injuries, but, you know, he admitted. The next part, he named names. He named names, and it needs to be dealt with. Find the living crap out of these schools, and the donors are going, "Hey man, I didn't sign up to give money to pay a fine. I paid a lot of money so my name can be slapped up there on the side of some building so everybody will think I'm a really good person. Yeah, I just hope they don't find out in 10 years that bad thing I did 10 years ago, and then they keep my money, keep my building, but take my name off of it. That's never happened. That'll fix things. You start handing out fines that hurt. Yeah. Here's the other piece of this, and I'm going to wrap this up. Phil Mafah almost transferred out because his talent was mismanaged by poor coaching hires. Now, I know some of you are going to talk about, Brian, get over it. Dabo is fixing it. Yes. But I am trying to etch it in a lot of your minds that coaching matters. Who you have on your coaching staff, their ability to develop players, their ability to create a game plan and strategy for a game matters. And it matters more than just wins and losses. It matters that they may drive someone who's extremely talented out of the program. Phil Mafah did not believe that Clemson could win at the level that they thought, or that he originally thought they could. You go back to 2021 when he was coming in as a freshman. was a different time. We didn't have all this mess that's went on up to this point. Bo Collins opened up over the past week or so, talking about the reason he left Clemson. I know some of you are going to say NIL, NIL. Okay, all right, maybe so. But he also said he said this. He said, I wanted to win a championship. What is that in layman's terms? He didn't believe that Clemson was in a place to win a championship. And you could say, well, they were going to go out and get Matt Luke, and they were going to do this. Bo Collins only had 1 year of eligibility left. And it's easy for us to see everything through orange and white lenses. But I have warned you over and over and over that you can't blame certain people for losing faith in the Tigers because you had a bunch of first-timers or inexperienced coaches on the sidelines wasting eligibility. Let that be a lesson to Clemson. Glad that Dabo's hired Tom Allen. But I want to be very clear to some of you. Some of you are going to, I know the comments that you're going to leave in the comments section. I've been doing this long enough. I can smell it. I can smell it. Brian, it's time to move on. Dabo made a mistake. He's a human being, but he's fixing it. Exactly. I agree with that 100%. But I want to make sure the lesson is hammered home to you, to myself, and yes, to any coaching staff in the country that wants to have long-term success. You cannot hire anyone to be on your staff. The reason we're excited about 2025, Tom Allen knows what he's doing because he's proven. He knows what he's doing with many years of success, many years of coaching. Matt Luke, the best offensive line coach in America. Is that because he coaches for Clemson, or he went to Clemson, or he ate at the Waffle House in Clemson? No. Is it because he has a good graduation rate? No, it's because he knows how to coach his flipping position. Don't let that ever escape your mind. And if Clemson, whether it's Dabo Swinney or any other coach that will come in the future, or any other coach on any other athletic program at Clemson, if they ever start hiring people that doesn't make sense, remember this video. It'll cost you wins. It'll cost you your reputation, and it will cost you players. It almost cost us Phil Mafah. Thank God things are turning around. Let's see. John Holiday. Well, hold on. I jumped ahead. Joel Farlow. Looks like I'm first. Good to see you, my friend. Tony Adcock. Good to see you. Go Tigers. Basketball and baseball. Yay. Yes, exactly. They're doing great. Hello, my brother. Good to see you, my friend. Well, seemed like the only time he played for the SEC is when he played SEC. South Carolina. Those were his worst games. Huh. Gideon may be the man's fingers crossed. Yeah, Cade threw 14 straight passes at one point, and that should have been, that's the point where the head coach looks at the offensive coordinator and goes, we're running the football. Well, I'm the OC, yeah, and you're calling bad plays. Football has turned into a joke, but I still love college baseball and softball. Go Noles. Looking forward to seeing y'all in Tallahassee. There's been some great games and great fans. Good to see you, James Osteen. Good to see you. NKZ, hello, and good point. Folks, if you like what I'm doing, hope you will pass it along. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. It does help my channel. Channel's growing. And really enjoy just connecting with y'all. There's a lot more to come. I have a video, by the way. Anyone who's watching this right now, I have a video that's going to premiere tonight. I believe it's 7:30. Talking about Clemson's true trap game. Now, I talked about Louisville a couple of weeks ago, but I'm telling you, I truly believe the trap game up at this point, unless something happens crazy, just the wheels fall off of this team, I believe the true trap game for this coming season is the third game of the season at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, much improved under Brent Key, brought my buddy Rec Talk on. So tonight, 7:30, you'll see that video go up. And I talked to him about Georgia Tech. What should we know about the Yellow Jackets? Who's coming back? Who did they lose? What's the overall mindset in Atlanta concerning Brent Key and the direction of the program versus when they had the other guys? Folks, y'all take care of yourself. I hope you have a great day. And as always, go Tigers.